If I gave you nearly $1 billion, what would you do with it? Would you invest? Would you go on a shopping spree that would make Elton John blush? Or would you flush it all down the toilet? Well, if you're Disney, you opt for choice number 3. In a twist worthy of Star Wars itself, it has been revealed that Disney spent a massive, jaw-dropping amount of money on streaming shows that can never recover the investment. An amount of money so great that you could buy 1.2 million PlayStation 5s, 16,000 Cybertrucks, 2,000 homes, or one Star Wars series that has historically low viewership. Which would you choose? It's nice to know Disney has their priorities straight.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
It's clear that Andor has become the galaxy's most expensive lullaby. Despite unprecedented production values and a scope worthy of the big screen, Andor has largely put Star Wars fans to sleep. Once meant to reignite the passion of disillusioned viewers after the dumpster fire known as the sequel trilogy, Solo, and pretty much everything else save for Rogue One and The Mandalorian in the beginning, the series instead proved a slow burn that, while polished, offers more snooze than spark. However, Disney's bold investment, intended to breathe new life into the franchise, may have inadvertently showcased just how hollow big-budget spectacle can feel when the magic of Star Wars is lost in the shuffle and the bottomless hole known as streaming. In this video, we'll explore how Andor's colossal production costs and lukewarm reception reflect the broader saga of Disney's battle to keep Star Wars fans on board, and why it might be time to hit hyperdrive towards a new hope. Disney has revealed that the cost of making Star Wars streaming show Andor has surged to $645 million. Jeez. And that's after it spent a record $290 million last year on filming the second season. Man, I don't even know what to say about that. It is the highest ever annual spending on a Star Wars production, but only that disclosed in Disney's public filings. The staggering sum eclipses the $280 million spent on Star Wars The Last Jedi, and likewise, it's higher than the $243.8 million cost of The Force Awakens. Remarkably, the cost of Andor's second season is set to soar even higher. Filming began in November of 2022, but was suspended in summer of 2023 due to the SAG-AFTRA strike. It resumed in January, and wrapped the following month, though this was far from the end of that story. The budgets of streaming shows made in the United States are usually a closely guarded secret, as studios combine the amount of money spent on their productions and overall expenses and don't itemize them separately in their filings. It doesn't need to, as the data about the cost of Star Wars shows and movies comes straight from its financial statements. Productions filmed in the UK are subject to far higher levels of financial disclosure than their counterparts in the US, and there's good reason for this. The leading Hollywood studios shoot in the UK because its government reimburses up to 25.5% of the money they spend on filming there. To qualify for the reimbursement, shows must pass a points test based on factors such as how many members of the production team are from the UK and how much of the post-production work is done there. Furthermore, at least 10% of the core costs of production need to relate to activities in the UK, and in order to demonstrate this, the government studios set up a separate high-end television production company for each picture they make there. A Hollywood studio buys a script from a screenwriter and greenlights a show about it. If the studio decides to make a show in the UK, it then sets up a subsidiary company where they acquire the scripts from the US parent. If the UK company makes a profit, the financial benefit from the government comes in the form of a reduction to its tax bill. However, if it makes a loss, it receives a cash reimbursement, so the studios fund companies in a way which engineer this. The studios buy the rights to the show from the UK company, but only gives it approximately 75.5% of the projected production cost. The remaining 25.5% is provided by the studio in the form of a loan. The loan and the revenue from the sale of the rights give the UK company 100% of the production budget for the show, and this sets the scene for the cash reimbursement. Marketing costs are not shown in the financial statements, as they tend to be covered directly by the studio. Likewise, revenue from the streaming subscription and merchandise also goes directly to the studio. Though, if we're being honest, there's not very much merchandise revenue from Disney Star Wars shows on Disney Plus anymore. Disney had to rethink Star Wars after the failure of Solo, another Star Wars movie based on a classic character. Solo lost $90 million at the box office, and the Obi-Wan movie was then turned into a streaming series. Filming was due to begin in summer of 2020, but it was not to be. By May of 2021, the crew had gathered in Los Angeles and filming began there. However, the filings from the UK revealed that a total of $7.2 million had been spent by October of 2019, not long before the pre-production of Obi-Wan halted. It's likely that there was more spent on the show in the intervening time, but the bulk of the cost should have shown for the October 31st filing. The new company, E&E Industries, wasn't mothballed when Obi-Wan Kenobi was put on hold. Instead, it became the production company for Andor, which was shot in the historic Pinewood studio outside of London and on location across the UK. In an interview with Comic Book Movie, Andor special effects supervisor Neil Scanlon revealed that around 6 weeks of pre-production had been done on Andor by the time the UK went into lockdown at the end of March 2020. Filming was delayed repeatedly due to the pandemic, leading to E&E Industries banking a $1.6 million government grant along with $2 million from an insurance claim. Filming finally began in late September of 2021, and by late November, a total of $271.6 million has been spent on Andor's first season, including the $7.2 million on Obi-Wan. Over the following year, a further $82.5 million was spent on Andor, and it is believed that this is largely dedicated to post-production as the show premiered in September of 2022. However, pre-production on Season 2 also accounted for some of this spending. Disney spent $290.9 million over the course of the following year, but it doesn't stop there. Filings reveal that they also received a $129.3 million reimbursement for filming in the UK, which brings Andor's spending down a bit to only $500 million at $515.7 million. Throwing money at a project does little to address the deeper creative and conceptual issues, something Disney's handling of Star Wars illustrates all too well. Despite Andor's colossal $645 million budget, audiences have remained disengaged, revealing that spectacle alone can't make up for a fractured fan base and inconsistent storytelling. Massive investments in special effects or celebrity casting may capture brief attention, but they fail to rekindle genuine excitement or loyalty if the core narrative and characters don't resonate. Instead of revamping fundamental plot structures or listening to fans for feedback, Star Wars has often buried underlying problems under a mountain of cash. The result? An ever-growing production tab that yields diminishing returns, proving yet again that throwing money at a problem doesn't inherently solve it. It just makes for a very expensive failure. As recently as last year, Andor was reportedly the least watched Disney Plus Star Wars project behind all others starring more names like Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Boba Fett, and The Mandalorian. After Andor aired, The Acolyte then became the lowest watched Disney Plus series and was canceled for the plainly stated reason that viewership did not justify the cost. It also wasn't the bigotry or whatever else those yahoos on social media like to decry. The show reportedly cost $230 million for its first season, and it was the least watched Star Wars show at the time. Now we have The Skeleton Crew, which may again be the least watched Disney Plus Star Wars series, with a budget of only $120 million. Man, I'd love to have Disney's problems. It remains to be seen if it will be renewed for Season 2, but it doesn't seem likely at this point, as the show is not charging in streaming top 10 lists despite topping Disney Plus's own internal one. Disney has veered so hard into almost nothing but streaming Star Wars content that it's completely lost control of the situation. With these ballooned budgets and viewership that simply cannot, under any circumstance, justify that. Disney was scared off making more theatrical films after Solo underperformed, but its streaming run has produced really only one hit. So far as we know, Ahsoka is getting a second season, likely 3 years after the first one aired, and Andor only got 2 seasons in the first place because that deal was secured ahead of time. You can imagine that the show may have been canceled with that budget and that viewership had that original deal not been in place. As much as some fans appreciate Disney throwing money into Star Wars, this cannot go on for much longer. They're going to flip back to films and away from so many huge budgeted streaming productions, though it's having plenty of trouble getting those projects off the ground on that side too. Disney's track record with unmade Star Wars movies illustrates how even projects that never see the light of day can burn through vast sums of money. Over the past few years alone, multiple films have been announced and quietly shelved. Rian Johnson's planned trilogy, Kevin Feige's rumored standalone project, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss's planned trilogy, J.D. Dillard's untitled feature, and Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, among others. Each of these canceled or indefinitely postponed titles rack up considerable development costs, script commissions, concept art teams, production staff salaries, and early marketing expenditures. Although exact figures remain tightly guarded, insiders speculate that these scrapped projects collectively cost Disney tens of millions of dollars, if not more, in sunk expenses that will never be recouped. The pattern underscores a glaring financial pitfall in modern franchise management. Simply announcing big ideas and throwing money at them doesn't guarantee a film will make it to theaters or turn a profit. The reason for these massive failures falls into 2 categories: poor management and the fallacy of streaming as a viable alternative to entertainment consumption. Under Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy's leadership, Lucasfilm has seen significant missteps, most recently with the production of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. The film reportedly carried a colossal production cost of around $295 million, yet its global box office returns fell far short of the break-even mark, especially once marketing and distribution costs were factored in. This is just the most recent financial misfire that cast doubt on Kennedy's stewardship. During Kathleen Kennedy's tenure as president of Lucasfilm, Star Wars has also suffered from multiple financial disappointments that have chipped away at the franchise's once unassailable reputation. Despite an initial box office triumph with The Force Awakens, subsequent films encountered dwindling returns and costly production setbacks. Solo, a Star Wars story, famously bombed at the box office, failing to recoup its large budget and leading Disney to drastically reevaluate its Star Wars release strategy. Meanwhile, extended development times and creative disagreements led to repeated delays or outright cancellations of new projects, all racking up expensive pre-production costs without reaching audiences. These patterns reveal how under Kennedy's leadership, even the most iconic space saga is not immune to financial misfires or lost goodwill, an alarming trend for a franchise that was once guaranteed box office gold. While longtime fans had hoped for a triumphant return to form, the film's underperformance instead raised renewed questions about Lucasfilm's ability to manage cherished franchises without draining resources or diminishing their cultural value. Another Lucasfilm failure was Willow. Willow on Disney Plus was intended to capitalize on nostalgia of the 1988 fantasy classic and deliver a fresh streaming hit, yet it fell short of those lofty ambitions. Despite a sizable production budget and aggressive marketing, the series struggled to gain traction of both longtime fans of the original film and new viewers unacquainted with the property. Mixed reviews and low audience engagement ultimately spelled doom, with Disney opting to end the show just after one season and removing it completely from Disney Plus. From a financial standpoint, the lackluster response translated into a poor return on investment, especially in a streaming landscape that hinges on subscriber retention and high viewer metrics. The show's underperformance not only highlights the inherent risk of banking on nostalgia-driven IPs, but also underscores the precarious reality of expensive original content in a hyper-competitive streaming environment, which brings us to our next point. Streaming was always destined to hit a wall because it attempted to turn a niche convenience into a one-size-fits-all solution for both consumers and content creators. While the idea of on-demand entertainment initially excited viewers, it quickly gave way to a ballooning subscription ecosystem, fractured libraries, and exorbitant production costs. Overproduction and overspending have become synonymous with streaming platforms, forcing them to churn out must-see hits at an unsustainable rate. Meanwhile, smaller, more thoughtful projects get lost in the shuffle, diluting not just the marketplace, but the very culture that once made entertainment feel special. Moreover, the streaming wars fueled a race to produce exclusive content, but many platforms inadvertently sacrifice storytelling quality for sheer volume. In recent years, streaming platforms have poured unprecedented sums into original series, many which have struggled to justify their colossal budgets. For instance, Amazon's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power reportedly cost hundreds of millions of dollars, but faced lukewarm reception, while Netflix's Jupiter Legacy, carrying a similar hefty price tag, was cancelled just after one season. These high-profile misfires highlight a critical shortcoming in the industry's current approach. Lavish spending and familiar IP alone can't guarantee success if a show fails to resonate with viewers. The bubble grew bigger with each new Netflix, Disney Plus, or HBO original series, but as subscriptions plateaued and consumer fatigue set in, it became clear that the model couldn't indefinitely sustain itself. A cost of hundreds of millions of dollars per season, paired with the challenge of grabbing and holding viewer attention, illustrates a fundamental flaw. Without long-term loyalty and robust traditional television backings, streaming alone can't conveniently deliver profitability or cultural staying power. As the dust settles, we're left with an oversupply of generic, often forgettable content and fewer event series phenomena, a stark reminder that building an empire on streaming without solid foundations leads to inevitable collapse. Star Wars, once a seemingly unstoppable pop culture juggernaut, has seen its influence wane in recent years, particularly in an era of blockbuster streaming. Rather than commanding a cultural spotlight, these mega-budgeted streaming shows are increasingly sidelined to niche audiences or overshadowed by the sheer volume of competing content. Fans who once celebrated every new Star Wars adventure now express a sense of fatigue or even indifference, suggesting the brand's once universal appeal is fracturing under the weight of relentless spin-offs or inconsistent storytelling. While the nostalgia factor still holds some sway, especially for longtime devotees, the series has undoubtedly lost much of its ability to unify mass audience or spark widespread, shared pop culture moments. One of the challenges Star Wars has faced in recent years is a disconnect between what fans expect and what the franchise delivers, particularly with new shows like The Acolyte. Critics argue that instead of refining its core elements that made the original films culturally significant, like mythic storytelling, relatable heroes, and clear moral conflicts, Lucasfilm has focused on appealing to demographic segments that may not be deeply invested in the saga. This approach can lead to content that feels engineered more by marketing data than by a narrative inspiration, resulting in lukewarm receptions from longtime fans and a broader audience alike, a death knell for a form of entertainment so exorbitantly expensive. As a consequence, even ambitious series rumored to explore uncharted eras in Star Wars timelines can end up struggling to find a cohesive identity or a devoted viewership. The shift toward targeting female and minority audiences became more pronounced around the time of The Force Awakens, when Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy made a public push to make Star Wars more inclusive and female-centric. While some applauded the move towards broader representation, most felt the franchise began prioritizing social messaging over storytelling. The promotional tagline, "The Force is Female," meant to celebrate women's growing role in the universe, inadvertently alienated portions of the existing fanbase, including female fans who felt it reduced complex character arcs to simple talking points or branding exercises. Rather than feeling genuinely welcomed, they sensed the saga was being reshaped by top-down mandates, diminishing the organic appeal that once drew diverse audiences in droves. The backlash underscores a fundamental tension. Inclusivity on its own doesn't guarantee compelling storytelling, nor does it automatically resonate with viewers, if it seems disingenuous or forced. When Star Wars attempted to build narratives primarily around demographic targets rather than genuine creative impulses, it lost its emotional spark that captivated fans worldwide. Whether Star Wars can truly recover its former cultural impact depends heavily on a refocused creative vision and a willingness to recalibrate its relationship with fans. Instead of releasing show after show or film after film without considering narrative cohesion or audience appetite, Lucasfilm would need to prioritize quality, authenticity, and long-term planning over breakneck production schedules and flashy budgets. In a market oversaturated with high-end streaming productions, real innovation and genuine respect for established lore stands out more than ever. If the powers behind the franchise can heed those lessons, developing fewer, more focused stories that connect on an emotional level, there's still a possibility that Star Wars can reclaim its central place in the pop culture pantheon. Otherwise, the beloved galaxy far, far away may continue drifting far, far out of sight, overshadowed by a glut of content once meant to keep it in perpetual orbit. No matter how much money they spend, you can't buy the goodwill of an audience. This is a costly lesson Lucasfilm seemingly can't afford. So folks, what do you think about the situation right here? Nearly $500 million, over $500 million was spent on Andor, a show that put a lot of people to sleep. I know it's the best of what we got, but is that really a good thing? I say no. Go back into the archives and listen to our review of Andor. And well, I guess you can listen to our review of The Acolyte because we're not reviewing the Skeleton Crew. Not enough people care to even hear us talk about it, so we're on to other things. But folks, we'll be back at the end of the season to give you a quick wrap-up, as well as an update surrounding the financial information from Disney. 2025 is going to be an interesting year for the channel, so make sure you check out everything we put out. We're going to have a narrative thread through all of our videos, as well as getting deeper into the questions about why entertainment is so bad and making you laugh in the process. 2025 is the year of the bullshitter. Join us for all of our videos, all of our live streams, and all of our specials that we'll be bringing your way all throughout the year. Folks, this has been a hell of a year, and this might be the last time you hear from me. So Happy New Year, thank you for everything, and I'll be back next time with more. But in the meantime, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other. Stealing Solo asks the greatest what-if question of all time. What if a group of disgruntled Star Wars fans kidnap Harrison Ford and force him to remake Star Wars in their basement? That, and a whole lot more, is answered in Stealing Solo, a Captain's Parody. Stealing Solo has been called laugh out loud funny and the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs, and it's available now for a limited time only. Go to stealingsolo.com, which is powered by Shopify, so you get the reward-winning safety and security, and get yourselves a copy today. Once we sell through this limited backstock, I'm going back to the drawing board to bring you the sequel, which parodies Luke Skywalker's fall from grace, and finally the closing chapter, which I can't wait to get to, Frankenfisher, the Bride of Solo. And yes, it's exactly what you think it is. So folks, the only way to get that is go to stealingsolo.com right now, get yourselves a copy, and enjoy the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs.